listeners, and welcome to High Tea Mystique with your hosts, Kat.
And I'm Tess.
And Pam.
In a world changing faster than the time it takes to brew a cup of tea,
High Tea Mystique reminds you that no experience is too big or too small to teach us something about ourselves. So join us for a cup of tea as we steep into adulting, womanhood, independence, and more.
how's everybody doing today?
Good. Woody Roundup stuck in my head.
Yeah,
Woody's Roundup.
that's
Come
definitely
on, it's time
been
to play.
the most memorable part of the conversation pre-pod recording.
Yes. Discovering that there's a fourth Toy Story.
Rediscovering, remembering, memory.
I don't remember.
You fused 3 and 4. You
I
were
did.
like,
Happened
they
in
go
4.
to the fire and they go to the antique store. And I was like, this is
And
separate
one-
movies.
Right. And there's like so many years between the two movies as
Yeah.
well. And I remember that now. But yeah. So we're not going to talk about Toy Story today. So surprise.
What?
You probably thought, based off of what we were saying, that we were going to do another one of our themed episodes. But that's not today. But let us know if you would like more of those, because we're always happy to do whatever you'd like us to do. But no, we're back again for another new episode today. So thank you so much for joining us with High Tea Mystique. This is Kat talking if you're just listening in on your daily commute or while you're folding laundry. But for those of you who are watching on video, hey,
Hey.
you can see me maybe. I'm kind of blending in with the wall today.
I only see a floating head.
Dun, dun, dun.
We're prepping for Halloween.
Always.
I was talking earlier about how I'm missing that fall harvest food.
Yes.
Yes.
And you gave it to us with our pre-recording meal.
I did.
Shout out. Roasted sweet potatoes and beets. Oh, so good.
I
So,
know.
so
The
good.
description I wrote in the chat was hilarious. I felt like Gordon Ramsay.
It was very intricate. It was down to the seasonings.
Yes.
So for anyone who's wondering what the heck we're going to be talking about today, we have, in my opinion, a really fun episode for this one. I think it is quite reflective, but I think it's also very recent for us, some of the things we're going to be sharing on this one. And the topic today is about setting goals, right? How do you craft a plan to better your life, right? In any area. And this is goals of all different shapes and sizes, right? The big ones and the little ones, because if there's anything about doing things for yourself, it's that you can never be too detailed, right? So, because it's your life and you should put as much care into your life as you care about your life, right? And there's a direct correlation between the two. And we're going to talk about that. So that is our topic for today. And we, of course, have chosen a tea to pair with the topic. And this is a tea that we have never tried on the podcast before, but it has a lot of really familiar ingredients. So that means we're going to be just sharing some new fun facts about some of the ingredients in this tea. So we have here, I actually have the cup of it already poured in my hand. So I'm just going to take a sip really quick.
It's so good. It's so yummy.
Oh my goodness, yes. And it is herbal. This is an herbal tea. I'm going to set it right over here.
Mhm.
So just a reminder, with herbal teas, you can always let them steep for as long as you want. And we steeped our tea for at least 20 minutes.
Yes.
So the flavors are so pungent. And that's the benefit, right? Is you can have just an extremely strong herbal concoction. And you can do that with any tea, really, if you're willing to separate the herbal parts from the tea parts. So if you're like doing what Pam did in our collaboration episode with Allie on the last feature, how she blended 2 different flowers with the tea that she already had, that's a great way to get more powerful flavors. You could let this flower sit for 10 minutes and then you add in your tea, because black tea steeps for 3 minutes, green tea steeps for 1 to 2 minutes. So there's only so much flavor you can pull before it starts to get bitter. But anyway, total side fact. So today's tea is from the Republic of Tea. So, very familiar brand that you can get really great quality for being bagged teas, pre bagged teas. And this is their organic turmeric ginger tea. And it also is from the Spice of Life. Oh, I'm so sorry. It does have a green tea inside, but it must be very light because the flavor is not bitter at all in what we steeped it for. So there are primarily ingredients of turmeric, green tea, ginger, and cinnamon. And there's even a little bit of honey inside of this tea as well. So we know, right? You're telling me there's cinnamon, ginger, and turmeric in the same tea. I already know that this is an extremely good diuretic, anti inflammatory tea, right? So if I'm in my menstrual cycle, if I'm dealing with any type of cramps or bodily aches or injuries, if I have just done a hard workout, this is the tea for me, right? So we know all of this because we've talked about these ingredients many times before. So I just wanted to do a bit of additional research on turmeric specifically. I think that turmeric is a very powerful root, and its properties are endless, really. And we talk about the anti inflammatory, and we've talked about the spiritual side as well, right? About how it awakens something inside of the brain. That's no coincidence. So, upon doing a little bit further research, I discovered that there's a compound that is inside of turmeric, and it's called curcumin. And curcumin is a curcuminoid, right? It's the main one, and it's the most powerful one and potent one. And even though there's a very small percentage of it in turmeric, it is the active ingredient. And so it's linked to many, many beneficial things. And one of them is it is the most powerful antioxidants that's inside of turmeric. So clears out free radicals from the brain. So removes oxidation, and it's also linked towards memory growth, right? And not just memory, like not just not losing your memory, but also being able to recover your memory. Curcumin and turmeric are things that are used in cancer patients to help them rebuild uh, many different things, but also for patients with Alzheimer's and dementia to help them really combat their memory loss and potentially be able to regain things that they have already lost as well. And because I don't want to misspeak here, because again, these are things that I'm discovering as well, which is why I'm so grateful for our podcast, being able to continue to learn, is the way that it fights cancer. So ultimately, the curcuminoids can actually kill off cancer cells. There's evidence that it happens, it can actually prevent the cancer from growing in the first place. So it is just a preventive measure that you can take as well, just having a tea like this, just adding it into your regimen, right? It's so helpful to understand these things because these are just ingredients that are found in nature, guys. And isn't it amazing? Like the tools that we build every single episode for ourselves and for you all to just keep our bodies nice and nourished inside. So enjoy. Like I said, really, really easy tea for you guys to get. I know sometimes we feature ones that we found like out in the mountains or out in our travels. So it's nice to bring a tea that anyone can have access to. So enjoy. Hope you guys like that one. And I'm going to, I think, say that we're officially ready to hop into the episode.
I'm ready.
Let's
Yeah.
do it.
Awesome. So let's set some goals, right? We definitely understand that the idea of setting goals can be mixed, right? Sometimes you are super inspired and you want to start right away. And sometimes you have a goal that's been sitting on your heart for years and you have no idea how to start because the goal could actually be something that you feel is like the goal for your life, right? And where do we find the bridge to make amends with both, right? And make them both happen. And so we know that the easiest way to structure this episode is to kind of just start chronologically, right? And just go through what is the plan of how to create the goal, make the plan, see it in fruition, and then see what happens when you actually get to it. So we're going to start with visualization. So visualization is just one word to encapsulate creating it, right? Creating your goal. So ultimately, what I'm going to be doing today is kind of just going over each of these steps. And then between the three of us, we're going to share steps within it. Some of them are not steps, some of them are really more of options, right? Like what this part of the process can look like, but it resonates differently with other people. So we choose our own means. So we're going to dissect each one a little bit and share what has worked for us to get to some of the best goals that we've achieved in our lives so far. So for visualizing, we kind of decided that there are a few different ways that you can visualize what you want your goal to be. So I think one of the first ones that comes to my mind is a literal vision, right? So I think of the concept of vision boards, right? Anything that you can tangibly see that you can also maybe keep in your bedroom, right? In spaces that you are going to frequent, right? To continually remind yourself of your goal and of the things that you want. The other one would be journaling, right? There's still such a powerful form of visualization that happens when you write out what you want for yourself and things that you'll discover just as you write it out, because there's additional power that is given when you take any additional step, right? That just helps you connect with who you are and what you want. And then the third is a verbal, right? So you can verbally say the things that you want for yourself and how you're going to get there and what it's going to look like, right? It's nice to do all of these things in the very beginning, because is it actually how things are going to play out? Well, who's to say, right? You haven't started yet. So but you are giving yourself the reality now, right? That, well, if I can dream it exactly as the quote says, I can achieve it. So now I want to pass the mic around a little bit and talk about which of these resonates the best with us, if there are any that we maybe don't even do at all, right? And what is the reason behind that? Pam, why don't we take it over to you? You can start us off today.
Yeah, so I'm really excited for this episode. If you guys have seen our stories or follow along, this is a re-recording for us. And um I think the world and the universe was saying Tess needed to be in the episode. um
Yes.
so for me, I feel like I kind of do a blend of both, like all of them, all three of them, but I really focus a lot on the journaling aspect because verbalizing and visualizing it, a lot of that I'll do just mentally in my headspace. But I find that if I don't put it down on paper, I am not as active about making sure that I follow through with what I'm trying to plan and what it is that I want to achieve. So I think that for me, put making that extra step of manifesting it and materializing it into a physical thing, which for me is in a journal, especially when I was super into bullet journaling, that was super helpful for me because it was such a therapeutic thing for me to do where I'm setting up this whole agenda for myself, right? And really learning about what really works best for me. And in doing that, because it's so personalized to what I want to do and my goals, it forces me, right, to really think about what those goals are, and then it blends all of it. I'm able to visualize what it is that I want to get done. I'm able to uh verbalize it because it's almost like having a little tiny conversation with myself, whether if I speak it out loud or whether I speak it in my head. And at most, what it does for me is it forces me to sit down and actually think about it, because I find that if I just either verbalize, aka have a conversation in my head, or even just visualize it and mentally in my head, it's kind of easy to do it in a very detached way for me. And so I'll think about it and be like, yeah, that sounds so nice, or this would be so nice. But I don't think about the actual details in terms of, is this something that either I really want, or how can I actually achieve this, right? Is this something, an achievable goal of mine? Do I want it bad enough to break it down to all of these steps? So I find that journaling really does help me a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And also just knowing your personality, it's so fun to hear you say it because I see it play out in your life too, you know, and just how I've known you, that I can already see how it is the mark of success, right? That like when Pam is serious about something, it's going to happen this way. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like the difference
Yeah.
between, like you said, knowing that something, knowing that you're serious about something is
Right.
like, is it going to bring me to do this? Is it going to bring me to even think about it enough to want to write it down?
Yeah. It's almost like the difference between daydreaming and like really putting in the work to making your dreams come true. Because daydreaming, there's nothing wrong with that, right? That's where all of these beautiful possibilities come up into your head, and it's a great way to just start thinking about the all of the endless things that you could possibly want. But at some point, that dream has to come into your reality, and that's when it takes a lot more dedication. I think that pen to paper is that dedication.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I agree. I'm gonna hop onto that and say that I actually um started bullet journaling, when shortly after I met Pam, because it was also something that I saw. Yeah, there you go. I saw her do, and I saw how thoughtful it was and how committed it was. Commitment is a good word, because when you bullet journal, there's like these spaces to dedicate to, habit trackers, right? Like water intake, and even just putting that on the paper for yourself is like that commitment,
Yeah,
right?
even mood trackers,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you're
Yeah.
trying to figure out, are you happy with certain things or are you not?
Yeah. Um, I laugh sometimes too, because I think that bullet journaling is probably like a physician's best friend, because they're like, how much water have you take? I don't know. Let me look back. So I know it's um great big part of visualization. It's also part of kind of like memorializing, like another part of this conversation, which is like the process, right? Um, Besides, kind of committing pen to paper, I find that my visualization is most powerful in the people around me. And what does that that means for me, that I kind of think about a goal that I have, but I don't really see the the execution until I see someone else do it, right? I had been, man, I can't even remember how long, right? But I had been going like on and off to the gym for maybe like since ever since I graduated high school, like ever since I could, right? And I got a job, I paid for my own membership, but like the routine was crazy, you know? And I think I only really got settled on a routine until I saw someone else do it, you know? And that's been, of course, like a lot of people. That some people, Pam, have been kind enough to even like say like, well, just become part of my routine. And that is, I think the embodiment of kind of being in the best way, like seeing someone else do it, and then seeing how practical and how it's done, quite plainly, right? Like how it's done. um that has carried over into many things, right? Like going to the doctor, which is a goal and a thing, something I'm proud of, right? That I've talked about before. I could see that happening because, I had seen it. I mean, I'm no stranger to calling my own doctor. I've had to do it for a while, but I was helped because other people were telling me about how they went to the doctor and they just asked for a blood test. And it was like, and the doctor told them this and it was great. So it just made it less intimidating. And I'm like, oh, okay, going to the doctor is possible and it's not as scary. So seeing how kind of other people went through it, came out okay, and came out for the better, you're like, all right, I can see this in my life more and more. Um, the same thing happened to me for therapy, right? My therapist right now is actually somebody who, a friend recommended to me. And, she quite plainly said, like, you know, I would listen to you and I care about you, but I know nothing's going to actually change until you take this step. And she was telling me, like, trust me, every session is like this. It's possible, it's virtual, it's convenient. And I'm like, okay, the details are making this image clear. And that's what would really fuel my visualizing. And that's what set what kind of like the parameter, like my next step, my goals, right? Like what do I want out of this? And of course, part of that image was also who do I want to be at the end? And of course because I looked up to these people. They were my friends, they were more than my friends, honestly, like people I really, really loved. And what, you know, better source of motivation, you know? So people were definitely sources of visual aids for me, definitely seeing people go through it and, go through one step, second step, third step, fail at the third step, have to try again. And they did great and even better, or they hated it and they warned me and I listened to them. Yeah.
You know what I love about that is that I feel like it's really easy in our society to look down upon seeking out examples, because I feel like even in school, right, the whole idea is like, oh, these are the instructions. You should know how to do it without an example, right? And so, what I love about what you're saying in terms of following people and asking people is it makes it okay to understand that you don't have to have all of the knowledge, and that it's okay to learn along the way. Like, you don't have to start with already being at the perfect spot. It's just figuring it out as you go.
Yeah. That's my favorite thing about big plans, which I think inevitably we're talking about, like big long term plans with meaningful results. It's okay to take the first example for step one, find a new motivation for step two. I found that, and it's extremely helpful, and it's extremely gratifying when you get to come back to someone and be like, you helped me so much, thank you, and you just bond and grow closer. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really like how you mentioned the moment of how people share with you how the experience went for them, or they give you a little hint of like what it's going to be like when you do it. Because that's a crippling fear of mine, actually. Like, I'm very afraid of the unknown, and it can be my number one hesitation to start pursuing any goal, is that I am afraid of what it's going to look like, so I don't even want to visualize it, right? Because I am afraid, you know. I'm afraid to try something I haven't done, or I'm afraid that I can't step into that person, right? So it's like terrifying to even imagine it, that maybe it's easier if I just leave that on the side, and there's so many other things I am familiar with that I'll be okay with. But what's so interesting is, like, every single time I end up stepping over it and crossing that fear, it's like, so it feels like night and day, and also so quickly that I can start visualizing things that are like 10 times the scale, but they had to start with that first. It's like such a small piece of the unknown that I have to experience. And then this whole new world can open up, which is really interesting. And, I think for me, the main thing that I'm going to talk about today with goal setting from my personal experiences is the fact that I just ran my very first full marathon. And I know that
Yay!
yeah, so great,
Congratulations!
crazy. And I know that I've already talked about this, on our podcast, because it was something that I trained for 4 months. And ultimately, I was training for it for 4 months, but I had the vision to do it for about a year when I fell in love with running and realized that inevitably I would find myself running a marathon. But what's insane is I set New Year's resolutions, and I set New Year's resolutions for myself in January of 2023. And when I went back to revisit my resolutions in June of 2023, I was absolutely stupefied at the fact that running a half marathon wasn't even on my resolutions. And I was running, like, it was something I was already doing, and I knew that I wanted to do more, but I had no idea. The visualization is all that I'm trying to come into here. Like, I was still afraid in January, knowing that I wanted to run more. It was a goal of mine to run more, but I had no specific distance goals. And I forgot about that, right? Like in the middle of falling in love with the sport, starting to do it more, checking in with my goals to be like, oh my God, holy shit, I might actually get a New Year's resolution crossed off one time. Like this never happens. And like, no, it wasn't even on my list. Like I didn't even believe that I could be here right now. And what an eye opener that was. And so for me, I would say that my most effective ways of visualization and the way that they end up truly playing out, I usually start with journaling and then I get verbal. But I have never done a vision board, and I have never done bullet journaling. Like for me, it's really hard to get to that point. And so I usually end up writing out my thoughts, and writing out the things that I want. And then from there, I do verbal affirmations, but it usually starts on paper as well. So just like what Pam was saying, it's just interesting because it usually starts off very impulsively, and I might write down like 10 different things that I want. And then I might decide to pursue one or two of them, maybe if even, but it's like I get all of the ideas out to see what is actually connecting with me. Sometimes it's really absolutely an impulsive thing, and like can be an eye opener to show me just where I'm at right now. Like this is where my priorities are right now. These are the things that I'm thinking about. These are the things that I realize I haven't gotten over, but they don't necessarily mean that I need to be like pursuing an active goal. But other times the goal becomes very clear, like when I realized I was going to be signing up to run a full marathon. Because that started off as just writing down what I wanted running to look like in my life is how I realized that I needed to run a full marathon, right? Needed, right? Goal of mine. It felt like that. So, yeah. Now, I think that's just a good piece to leave us with for visualizing, right? I hope that we just painted the picture that it can really look like anything, even Tess adding in, the community, I think is a great, like, could almost be a fourth category, right? Of visualizing because you visualize through your community and through the successes of others. I think that's so valid and relatable and can connect you even deeper because you see that it's possible. So the next step is planning. I think people probably have a love hate relationship with this step
Oh yeah.
because it is a very, it's a pretty simple concept, right? Planning. So the two things that need to occur during this phase of you setting out to achieve your goal is you create a timeline, right? Of exactly when you want to have this goal in by. And we usually do this subconsciously, right? Like use exactly what I just said, New Year's resolutions, right? And I know I'm the unpopular person in the group who loves New Year's resolutions. But easy one, right? I have a deadline, December 31st. That's what it is every year. And so creating a timeline, right? Pam over here just graduated with her master's degree,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm sure that she had some goals between semesters, between the year, maybe even the decision from undergrad into master's, right? There was a timeline, and I'm sure she's going to talk about that. But all of these things are specific, whether they are given to us or whether we create them ourselves, because at the end of the day, it was still a choice that we made, right? For somebody to give us our timeline for us, right? It's still a part of our timeline. And then the second portion of planning, equally as important, is identifying what has to be done, right? Like if you want to be the director of the company that you are currently working for, right? And you want to operate at the top of your team and have many people under you, what do you have to do in order to get there, right? Because it's not just I'm going to join this company and then I'm going to become the director, right? You know that there are so many steps in between, and identifying what you have to get to in order to receive that position, right, to be offered that position, uh, that's also going to help you inform you of your timeline, right? Because if you're starting off as an advisor, right, and you need to become a supervisor or some type of leader before then, that's going to take time. That's its own goal. And your goal to become the director is still incredible and valid, and you should be pursuing that because you are worth it and you are definitely qualified. But you've got some mini goals here. It's like mini games to
Mm-hmm.
get to the end. And so I think just for us to kind of dive in and talk about this one, I think it's less about one over the other, but maybe more of like, how do you structure it when you plan, right? Like for you, Tess, do you think that you look at one first over the other? Do you take them into account at the same time? Do you struggle with one?
I do because I feel like I have, well, one, when you said like form a timeline, I almost like inside because I feel like I have such a, I don't want to say skewed, but that's the word that comes to mind, honestly. I have a skewed sense of time and how long like something should take, right? And I feel like that's half like my projection of maybe how long I'll take, or and a combination of like my perspective on time and how I think it's we have it all the time and yet nothing at all, right? Thank you. And I will literally tell someone, "Yeah, I want to finish this project of building this IKEA furniture.
Oof.
A week is a good time, right?" And then other people are like, "Nah, I build that shit in a day." And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh God." And I'm like, "That's fantastic. I had to adjust my timeline. Thank you." So I struggle with that, and of course that's a silly example, which is true, okay? But another real practical example is, I'll tell myself like, well, I want to give myself this much time to, find a therapist, right? And it's like, well, Tess, you said that, right? And then like 3 years passed and you never found one, right? And I was like, yeah, yeah, I'm talking to myself right now. I'm like, yeah, girl, you're right. So time for me is very precious. I know I can mishandle it a lot, and I can underestimate and overestimate how much time I'll actually need to do something. Because at the same time that I'm trying to be wary, like how much time do I have realistically, right? To do something like build IKEA furniture if I know I'm at work 7 hours, 8 hours a day. I have to come home. I have to take care of my cats. I have to clean the house. I have to do homework because I'm a graduate student. And then I have to think about this IKEA project. But on the other side, I'm like, come on. Nobody ever has time. You make time, right? So those are two headspaces I'm always kind of teetering in, and I'm like, man, what is my plan? I'm always coming back to the question, and sometimes, which is very true for me, I'll let things build and then I'll tackle everything in one day and exhaust myself. Not great. Not great. But it does happen. It happened yesterday, actually. I had like just simply been telling myself, I'm going to tackle my laundry. I'm going to tackle my laundry. I'm going to tackle my laundry. I had been saying that to myself for like 2 weeks. I finally did all of it yesterday. Did I go to bed at a decent hour? No, but
You
I
made the time.
I made the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for me, the it's interesting that it's a kind of a combination, right? Because I think that for you, Caitlin, December 31st is such a hard deadline. And for me, it's such a flexible, because of what Tess says, right? And so there are certain things in my life that have a hard deadline that is a lot easier for me to stick to, like my master's, because that's just something like if I don't get it done by this time, I'm not going to get my grade. And that's just money I'm wasting, if I don't finish my class on time. But I think that I find that in terms of timeline and the goals that I want to do, it's easier, and I tend to lean more on bigger picture versions of timelines, where it's like, okay, I know I want to get my master's. I understand what the typical length is, what kind of programs are available that is more realistic for how quickly I want to get it, or, whatever that may be, or even in terms of, I know that I would like to, let's say start a family before, ideally before 35. And so what do I have to do to get there, and like things like that. So it's like I plan so far into the future sometimes that maybe that's why close harsh hard deadlines that I set for myself for my own personal goals are a little bit hard for me to set. But when I break it down, right, like kind of how you were saying, into the steps, that's what I lean towards. But I haven't really done it in the way that you've explained it in the past, in terms of really detailing those steps. And one of the things that I do want to mention, that I don't want to get lost from the last time that we spoke about this, is when we had done this, you had mentioned that being very detailed and specific helps you understand how to get to where it is that you need to go. But it's also an affirmation for yourself of fighting that imposter syndrome, right? Because part of the scariness, and I feel like part of the reason why we kind of push these deadlines, is to give us more time, because we're refusing to kind of face it, face that challenge. And so, even recently, when I was trying to do a different thing that I was looking into, I used that advice, right? I remember when he had talked about it that night, I was like, oh, I'm going to start doing that. Like, that sounds so interesting. And I was doing that. I was breaking down what it is that I want to do, this big, scary thing. And then when I broke it down into different steps and I really looked into my own personal journey with that, I realized, oh, I can do this. And this is more achievable than I thought it was. And it really helped me focus on the goal and be more motivated and more dedicated to completing it, and setting up these sort of checkpoints with myself, right? To make sure that I am achieving it within the timeline that I want. But that has been so helpful, and I think something that's really beautiful is seeing also, one of the things that I love about this podcast is seeing the growth and the transformation from our friends, and even amongst ourselves as we're talking, and from previous episodes, right? It's one of the reasons why I loved bullet journaling so much, because you see the transition, you see the achievement, the process of when you're achieving those goals, when they've evolved, how things have changed. And I see that also when it comes to our podcast. And it's so beautiful to see how in the beginning, I remember hearing you talk about, oh, I get so caught up in the planning phase, and the planning is so beautiful, but then I just stick to the planning and never get it done. And so seeing you now change that whole methodology, like still using a lot of those fundamentals, but now pushing yourself to where you've met those goals and you've achieved this amazing thing, like running a whole ass marathon that I could never imagine myself doing. It's so like inspiring to see, and it's so special because it's such a good close friend of mine, and just seeing that transformation makes me feel, and I hope all of you listening makes you feel. And if you've heard us from the beginning, you see that growth, and I hope that you're growing with us, and I hope that you kind of find a way to capture those moments, and in sort of like time capsules, right? And like look back on that, because that transition, and when you reflect on where you were, where you're at now, and you see that process, right? Even if it's just a simple checklist, just looking back at that and saying, wow, this actually worked. I got to where I wanted to be. And then you start leaning on those tools more and more, and you start adapting them, and you start evolving them, and they just become so in tune. And, it's almost like, I mean, this is a really bad comparison, but it's like when you take really good care of anything, right? Like whether it be a car, whether it be whatever it is, it works so well when you're always checking in and fixing things, and that goes the same with your goals, right? Because there might be, we need to ask people. Maybe we thought this was the certain timeline, like how Tess said, she thought a week was good. And then there are people who are saying, oh no, a day. And so then maybe taking that reality check of like, okay, maybe I have to work a little bit harder on it. Or even just acknowledging that, I can see that for them, But I also see this for me. And those are the two truths, and both of them are valid. And so I think that, it's just for me more the breakdown of the steps, but even both of them together, is a great way to just put yourself down and do it and write down whether you break it up by a time frame or whether you break it out by steps. It's a really great way to just keep yourself accountable and even look back when in those times when you feel down, when you feel stagnant, to just realize, no, like I've done this before. I've done these steps and I've seen progress and I've achieved this specific goal. I can do it. Let me just see what I have to tweak. So I think it's super powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I'm really glad that you referenced something from our first attempt at this episode because it is very true. And it's something that I'm a little like I'm almost hesitant to talk about specificity because of what I've mentioned, right, as the tip of like stop making lists, get out of the journal, right, and start living more. But this is a unique episode, right? Like this is a really unique topic because I think that something that I'm going to mention is there's a lot of ritual in this practice, right? In how we set our goals, and it's in how we show up for ourselves. And I think that too often for me, so I know I'm not the only one, I don't give myself the amount of time that I'm willing to give a lot of other people in my life who I care about so much. And so this moment, right, of goal setting, this planning period is my opportunity to shower a lot of love and to shower a lot of confidence onto myself in showing myself that I can do what my heart wants me to do. And that's why I do encourage myself to be as specific as I want to in how I get to my goal. And it's also one of the reasons why, for me, setting a specific date, maybe I don't specific date all the time, but like, but getting very specific with my timeline and like when I want to achieve a goal by, I found a lot of freedom in doing it because there's one other element that I think is so important in creating your timeline, because you're going to know those benchmarks that you have to achieve, but there are going to be other things that have to happen for you that you won't know how to achieve yet, but they're still going to be a part of your timeline, right? So for example, when I was running when I was training for the marathon, there was a portion of my block that involved a lot of speed. And in that session, I knew that it was going to be the toughest part of my training, right? Like I knew that this is when I need to be most on top of what I'm doing between workouts because it's the recovery that's going to get me through this, right? How I recover. But I didn't know what my recovery was going to have to look like because I didn't know where I was going to be sore, right? I didn't know how these new things were going to affect me. I didn't know if it was going to be, was it going to have to be that I needed more sleep? Was it going to be that I needed more massages? Was it going to be that I needed to go see a physical therapist, right? And maybe it's all of the above, but I didn't know what I was going to need because everything is so situational, right? You can't possibly determine it. And the only thing that gave me like the peace of mind, right, as I'm planning this, as I'm trying to combat it, be all preventive about it, uh, was the trust that because I want it, it's going to happen, right? Like because I want to make sure my body is okay, my body's going to be okay. And I don't know how, right? Like for this one step, I know what need has to be met. I don't know how I'm going to get it, but I know I need it. Right. And that's where I think the magic really comes into our planning, because I think that when you put it out there, what you want, the universe answers a lot of your questions for you too.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but you have to put it out there, so you have to plan it. And it's okay to not know how you're going to get it. Right. That's, I think, how we feel about a lot of the goals and dreams that we have in life, especially the really big ones that are the closest to our hearts. But putting it out into the universe, letting somebody know, right, is asking for help, even if you don't have to verbalize it. And I think that's been a fun thing to add, right? When I'm planning my goals, it's like, why would I cross something out? Like if I wrote it down and it's a part of my planning process, it's there. Like I don't take the eraser to anything anymore. Like I want it all to happen. And I would rather look back and see that there were things that I got to add in, right? As opposed to things that I crossed out that maybe either happened anyway or that never happened because I crossed them out and I took them off of my goals. And it's like I want my perfect plan to happen. And I can also say that as an adult, I'm okay with things not being perfect, right? You can have both. There's a lot of dualities in life because you just have to put what you want out there. And I hope that that's helpful, to you all as you're. I'm sure that there are people listening to this episode who are really stuck, who are really stuck towards getting to something that they've wanted for a really long time. And I'm here to say, like, I really think that you deserve, like, the dream and you deserve for it to happen exactly how you want it to happen. I just think that you should also be open to receive things that you would have never imagined you were capable of getting to. Because in my world, right, the way that I see it, it's one or the other. Don't think that there are going to be things that are going to come that are going to take your dream away. Nothing can take your dream away, right? Nothing can stop you from achieving this goal because it's in your heart for a reason. Because we're divine beings and everything that sits in our spirit was designed to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that on planning. So
Word. I just want to say, I think Caitlin's last sentence is like, it needs to be followed up with a mic drop or something like, word.
just facts, just facts. So the next step is arguably the toughest part. And we understand, and I think that we all share this next piece with empathy.
Yeah.
Because the next step is the process, right? The next step is the actual execution and pursuit of said goals, right? The process can take anywhere from 1 week to the next 10 years of your life, So we get it. We're in it. But the only two bits of advice that we can really elaborate on today are to trust it, to trust the process, right? Trust yourself, trust the plan that you have created, trust the people, right, who you've put in your corner to support you in your means to getting to this goal, and find the joy as often as you can. And the second is to just be consistent because it's one of the traits of truly successful people is that they were just consistent about something. It's really what marks the difference, and so if there's something that you want, I promise you will get it if you just keep pushing for it every single day, right? Every single day. And if it's something that you feel like you technically can't pursue every single day, put your energy into it every single day, right? Think about it every single day because just thinking about something can get the ball rolling and can get ideas flowing and get you closer to it, believe it or not. So I think this would be a fun one for Pam. Why don't you start us off on this one? What do you have to encourage the folks listening in?
One of the things that I think is important that I want to highlight is the idea of specificity, right? And also being open to what else may be out there, right? Because it's important to be specific about what you want because that phrase, be careful what you wish for, is very true. And I've found that to be my truth in my life. When I look back, I realize, when I reflect on some things, I'm like, damn, why did that happen? That's so crazy. But then when I think about it, I'm like, wait a minute, I asked for like a perfect example is my relationships. Like my very first one, I was young and all I wanted was a cute boy who played video games, was a little bit nerdy, and that's what I got. And then as I kind of grew, I learned, okay, there's more that I want. There's more to a relationship than just, you being cute and like having a few things in common. There needs to be, the next iteration of that was like I would love someone who kind of shared in my culture. I really enjoy, Hispanic Latin music. I love that aspect of myself. I would love someone who's into their culture as well. And that's who I got, right? But then I learned, wait a minute, if I want this and I want to have a family, I need someone who has my same ideals, my same values. And so it's not to say that what you like that you don't deserve anything, right? You deserve the world. But being specific about it, number one, helps you really understand, like, does this want still identify with who I am at this moment? Or have I changed? Because as humans, change is the also the other constant, right? And so what you want and how that shows up in your life can also change. And so being specific helps you realize, number one, do you really want it? Number two, how do you really want it? And are you sure? But then what's also important is you have it, and then you let it go, and you're open to the idea that this is what I want, but maybe the universe has a better something better for me. And that's the part where you kind of have to be open to other opportunities and not super closed off, because something that I kind of want to ward against, and I've seen it in the past with a few friends of mine, is that tunnel vision. Sometimes it's good depending on what it is that you're going for. A lot of the times it can also have a negative effect, right? Because you're so focused on this one thing, and then the universe may be offering you all of these other opportunities, but because you think it has to be exactly like this, with the whatever knowledge that you have at that time, you that's when you might feel stagnant, right? That's when you might feel stuck, because you're focused on this one thing, this one thing, this one thing, and that one thing can still happen in various different ways, you know. So I think really being open about that, and understanding that yes, this is what I want, but it can happen in different ways, and what I want can change, you know. So I think that that's the biggest thing that was going on in my head as you were talking. And one of the things that I really want to impart, because I understand the complexities that we feel when it comes to planning, when it comes to goal setting, and when we don't achieve them, or where we think we don't achieve them. And that's when you have to take that step back and kind of look at it through this lens of gratitude and be grateful for how far you've come. And that's where trusting that process comes in, right? It's trusting and knowing that you had that goal, you're working towards it. How it might grow, you're not sure. It's like planting. You know, you planted a pumpkin, but how is that pumpkin going to pop out? Is it going to be a perfect round big pumpkin? Is it going to come out a little bit lumpy? Is it bigger than you thought? Is it smaller than you thought it was going to be? Yeah, but it's still a pumpkin, and you worked hard to grow it. And that's where that sense for some people of lack of control might start overcoming you, and that sense of like, why aren't things changing? Why aren't things going the way that I want? They are. You don't see it. They are. And it may not be exactly as you want, but you didn't say you wanted a perfect round pumpkin. You said you wanted a pumpkin. So here's a pumpkin. Even if it's lopsided, it's still a pumpkin.
It's
So,
still a pumpkin.
mm-hmm,
It's so true. It's about the way that you look at everything. But it's important too to note that, like what Pam said, does play into the planning process as well. Because it's about how specific you get with it that allows you to be able to really see it as it's
mm-hmm,
happening.
there's there's a lot of like little anecdotes that are coming to my mind just because I think I resonate very much with surprises and accepting kind of what the process will throw at you, right? Um I had a I had a strong desire, you know, back in 2022 to just earn more money. And I was, of course, doing it for, lots of reasons. I felt like I had outgrown like my current job in 22, and I was like, I'm capable, right? I've reached
a part of this, goal, and I'm ready, right? Like professional development and just growing confidence. And the roads were not kind to that goal. It's intimidating. It's intimidating to kind of decide you're ready for a new job, because I'm sure everybody dreads interviews and meeting new people and trying to make the best impression and being on guard to, be your best self. And it's very exhausting. And I put myself on that path back in 22, and it's actually 20, towards the end of 21 onto 22. That's how long it took, right? And um I even told myself, because I was actually talking about the story today at work. And I was, telling the story of how, like, I basically went to my supervisor at the time, and I was like, I think I'm ready to move on. And they agreed. They were like, yeah, you're ready. And I had, like, I thought I was on the right path, just from someone who, also saw, like, yeah, you're ready. Went to my interview, went onto this path, got into this new job, and I really self sabotaged myself, you know, just from not being exactly what I envisioned, like that tunnel vision, right? I thought, oh my God, I was so confident, in my previous position. Maybe I wasn't ready. I'm not jumping into this job knowing exactly what to do, and knowing exactly what to say, and being in the best mood every day because I am making more money. Like, what's wrong with me? But I didn't realize that I wasn't at the goal point. I was still in the process, because telling yourself you're done with one step means going into a whole new realm of work and patience and understanding, and growing new confidence, going into a new pond, right, as they say, for the big fish. And I was really panicky. I was so scared, so self-debilitating, confiding in friends and asking them, am I doing this wrong? Am I crazy? Pam, remember those stories. And I was so scared, because I felt like, oh my God, I'm at my goal point. Shouldn't I be happy? Shouldn't I be this amazing, thriving person? And I think it's very wise to say and to lend yourself the space to, if you're feeling this way, if you're feeling stuck, and it could be because you think you're at like an end when really you're still in the thick of it. you know this is not the end all be all. This means more work needs to be done, more is to be discovered, more is to be learned about yourself, about this new place, this new person, this new goal, etc., whatever you're imagining, right? um and once I realized that, I actually started to feel like the person I wanted to be, and I feel really confident with, all of that panic that I told you about before. I don't feel that anymore. you know I don't feel that anymore. I feel super proud of all the stupid shit I've done at work, and the mistakes I've made, and the relationships I have. And I'm just so extremely proud, right? But it would not have happened if, again, I didn't listen to the people that love me, and and love myself, you know, and tell myself, this is not some type of wall that you're supposed to finish here. You got to just keep climbing, right? And just overcome what you expect, right? Which is, I think, exactly what I'm trying to piggyback off of what, Pam is saying. Um let go of, what what you should be, or what this should look like, and really embrace what is. Because once I started really doing that, I also just learned a lot about other goals that I wanted to make. Cause, like we were saying, you said it, can like you get a little taste of the unknown, and it becomes your known, and now there's just a whole other universe, so I really resonated with that, extremely. Yeah.
I think it's also because with every goal that we achieve in life, we grow and we like morph into a new version of ourselves. Well, shoot, what's it called in Pokemon? We evolve, the evolution, right? So it's like you can't, it's almost like the evolution comes with a new set of glasses, and like each set shows you a new world that you didn't see. So, like, oh, I think Pam actually might have talked about a map and how it's like there are clouded parts of a map, right? And you don't get to see them until you've unlocked the first part, right? And so it's interesting because we talk about how during the timeline, you don't know exactly all the time. You don't know exactly when things play out. You just know that they have to play out. So it's a really interesting map that we have. And so imagine, right, you achieve a step so much earlier on than you thought you were going to have to, but now that you've gotten there, all of these little areas pop up around it, right? And like new things are bubbling to the surface that you never thought were an option before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think the process is, I mean, as I mentioned, right, it's the hardest part, right? It's going through it. But I think something that for me stood out from my marathon was as I was getting towards it, everyone told me, like, enjoy the race, enjoy the race, enjoy the race, but it's really the training that you're going to remember. And I had to do the race to get it, because I was like, I don't know, man, the race is pretty iconic. Like, it's a really good race, it's pretty famous. I think I'm going to remember that, but honestly, I can say it's been about a month after the marathon, and it's not necessary. I mean, hey, everything I said about the race is true. It was amazing, incredible day, one of the best days of my life. But you know what else was one of the best days of my life? Running the longest run that I had run every single time throughout my training cycle, because every single time I beat the run before, right? Those were the ones. You know why? Because I actually got to run it with my training partners. Because when I ran my very first 22 miler and I cried right at the finish line, one of my teammates was there to see me do it. Like it was those memories. And we got breakfast afterwards. Like it was those memories for me that made that one morning of racing the marathon feel what it felt like, because it was that I had put so much work into this one day, not even a day, to these few hours, and I don't think I would have gotten that without everything that came before. So I'm so grateful to everything that came before, and like I have the most, like, I don't know, I could say orgasmic because I just love it so much, but like my training plan, like every single workout going in and filling in what the goal was, what I actually did. Sometimes it was exactly what it was supposed to be. Sometimes it was less than what it was supposed to be, but it's so refreshing to have something that I can look back on, right? My plan and see every single day what I did, the proof is right there. The proof is right there. And as we transition into the last step of our goal setting episode today, I'm going to start it off with a small anecdote from a movie, because I think it's a really good segue from the process into getting to the end, because that is the last step, right? Is what happens when we make it to our goal, right? Like, how do we reflect? Like, what went right? What went wrong? Is our goal even the same anymore? Did it change, right? Halfway through because we learned something about ourselves, or we realized that there were other things out there that we could be aiming for that were actually better for us? All of these things are valid, and all of these things are wins for you. Okay. If there's anything that I can say right now. And so my anecdote is not my own personal one, but it's from a movie that inspired me in so many ways. And one of them was to run a marathon. And it's the movie Brittany Runs a Marathon. And I might have mentioned this in an episode previously because it was relevant to that topic. But today it's relevant to this one. So the movie is about a girl who is about to turn 30. And in turning 30, she goes to the doctor, and the doctor tells her that she's at risk for several different health issues. And so she decides to cold turkey start running to combat these health issues, because I think the doctor might have recommended a bit of cardio, right, to like help. And so she decides to just go right to running. And the movie does an amazing job of painting the picture of how hard it is for somebody to start moving their body, and like to start moving their body after not just a lifetime of not doing it, but like a lifetime of self harm too. Because the movie also shows her going through a bit of alcoholism and just body dysmorphia, even a bit of bulimia. And so there are suggestions to this, right? Because the movie itself is about something different. It's about her journey into loving herself. And she does it through running, right? That happens to be her in. And there comes a point in the film where she is zeroed in on running. She signed up for her first marathon. She is in the heat of her training. She is succeeding at things because they facilitate her running, right? She has to earn a bunch of money to run this marathon. So she gets an amazing job. She got herself out of a rut. She ends up doing really well at her job. She's one of the best employees. This is like a completely different person from who she was before. Her roommate used to be the type of person who would step all over her, right? And she would be known as like a certain type of friend within her group of friends. And now these things were no longer happening. But then we start to go to the other side, right? Now she's actually becoming the one who's like uh saying derogatory comments to her roommate as opposed to it being the other way around. Now she's the one blowing off her running friends to just go and run on her own. She's the one denying people money to donate to her cause because she needs to do it on her own. Very uh Unfortunately, she was doing very toxic things to her success because she was burning bridges with the people who not only knew her and loved her before, but were also there to support her in her success. And I thought of this story because of Pam's mentioning of tunnel vision, because I think that tunnel vision can work for you and against you, right? It can really zero you in on your goals. And it also helps you to zero in on yourself, right? And caring and putting yourself first. But the thing that can also happen in pursuit of our goals is when we're not specific enough about what it looks like to get there, we can end up changing some parts of our life too. And so when I think of like what happens when you get to the end of your goal and things didn't go right, um, just make sure it's not community, because Tess has done a wonderful job today of painting the picture of how important community is to getting anything in our lives.
Mhm.
And if you don't have anybody to celebrate with at the end, then you lost something. You didn't necessarily gain something, and that's why it's so important to find the people that you trust who, if you feel like this is a goal that you don't want to share with the entire world, oh my goodness, wow, that's crazy. Why would you not want to share your goal with the whole world? But find those people, like find those couple of people that you can trust, because when things get hard, you need to have people who you can lean on. You can't be thinking that it's just you out here doing this on your own, because it's just a slippery slope to a really toxic mentality. And you don't want to get to that. You don't want to get to the finish line with no one there to celebrate with you.
Mhm.
Tess, I think you would be a great person to speak next. If you want to continue to talk about community, amazing. But just talking about what happens when you get to the finish line, what happens once you've gotten there.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think I have crossed finish lines and then have come down from like the stress. Like it's almost like a um I'm losing the word for it, but it's like a downward
Dif-
downward trot from a steep hill. So it's pretty harsh, you know? And it feels like it's from the exhaustion of the process, it's from the stress of like, will it happen, won't it, will it happen, won't it? And then when it arrives, I find myself without fail being like almost panicky about like, just coming down from that success. There's also a part of me that knows um it's time to celebrate, right? And there are times where I'm hesitant to kind of bring things to light, and it's funny because I think I'm remembering somebody actually reached out to me and reacted to our last episode with Ali, and they were actually reaching out to me and they said, um I actually really, I'm losing my words here. I really related to your story about your brother and stuff, and they told me that they were also kind of assuming because they experienced this that, the whole what I had spoken about was like, hiding my success for the sake of my brother. And they were telling me like, yeah, like my grandmother and my mom were telling me to do that too, right? And there were other people that were like, yeah, I like they were reacting to the episode and they were reaching out to me and they're like, yeah, are you sure it wasn't like people in your family that were telling you to do that and maybe you were just a kid and you didn't know? And that got me really thinking about how I connect to my success and what I do to myself when I succeed. And I'll tell you, Kat, instantly, the thing is, it's not enough, right? I'm always like, all right, what's next? I finished this. What's on to the next, you know? And I can't tell you how much community also helps with that, with kind of, mitigating. There doesn't have to be a next right now. This is just so great, let's enjoy this now, right? And I'm like, yeah, but still turning and like looking at what's happening next.
You know what's so funny? I had a conversation with one of my guy friends about that because, he's raised in traditional Cuban American household, and being the male, the traditional concept of like making sure you contribute financially. And I remember hearing him say, no, I have to keep going, like I have to keep going, have to keep going, whatever, keep making more, whatever it is. And I remember asking him like, but once you get to that point of what you said you wanted to be at what point do you ever get to relax and just enjoy all your hard work? And he just looks at me and is like, no, you just keep going. I'm like, no, you gotta enjoy it. Like, what's the
That's
point of all
burnout,
that
friend.
work? Yeah. Like, what's the point in putting all of this effort if you cannot enjoy the fruits of your labor?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm telling you, I don't know. um I being very honest, right? Because I will tell you community is a big part of it to help me undo a very burnout perspective of, all right, this is done, moving on to the next thing before really reaping what I sowed. So it's tough because I feel like a lot of people maybe are in the same headset as me when you ask me that question, like, I don't know what the success is. And that's extremely undermining. And I'm learning because our listeners definitely reacted to what I said last episode and they were like, whoa, 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 I don't think it was you, I think it was the family. And I was like, you may have a point. My grandmother was, of course, as every Hispanic older woman who was born in the 1920s. She had a favor, she favored the men in the house to serve the men and stuff like that. So could have could there have been some deep-seated relation with me and what I do well and what I excel at? Maybe. Couldn't be for sure. I'll get back to you on that and have a few sessions on that and get back to you guys.
Tessa's gonna have some turmeric tea every day until she remembers.
Yes. I'll work on it.
Yeah, but I also think that uh regardless, the idea, right, that success never really comes because you're thinking about the next thing, uh, is ultimately exactly what the message is, of course, Pam is still going to speak on how she feels about what happens once you achieve success. But since you already said it, Tess, I think that that's the natural evolution of what we do, right? As people, right? You feel like you might not give yourself enough time to celebrate, and I think that, like, you should absolutely, like, it's important for people to hear that too. I think that is definitely a truth. But I think that the natural journey for any person who's in this healthy cycle of living life to the fullest and wanting to make the most of their time here, it's always like that, right? Like, that's what we do. It's like what we're born to do. We're born to achieve greatness, right? But it's greatness by our own means, and it's always in what we want in the moment. So it's always one goal to the next goal. We're always evolving and celebrating, but it's good to have community around you to remind you to celebrate your wins, because you are worthy of celebrating every single thing that you win in this life. And what happens when you don't have community around you, for this particular goal, right? How do you still choose to celebrate you in that moment is definitely probably more of a question we can leave with you, listeners, as opposed to ourselves answering, because I think we're all still figuring out that too.
Mhm. I think that for me, it just it looks exactly like that, right? It's an evolution. Once something is accomplished, I try to put in that effort really to celebrate. But I also know that I'm someone who loves to learn, and it's for me, it's always been common sense that as people, it's in our nature to evolve. And one of the most beautiful things that I always hear in terms of long term relationships, right? And why they work is because the person, when you're with somebody, you have to understand, you have to love them for who they are and the future versions of themselves, you know? And just what a beautiful journey to be along their side and see the transformation of who they become, because we are multidimensional. We're multidimensional beings. We have conscious thoughts, and with conscious thought means processing new information and seeing how that adapts your perspective. Because once you learn something new, even if you don't agree with it, even if it's, something you're adamant that will never be a part of your life, it still has an effect on you, and it's still going to change you. And that goes the same with the goals that you set, the goals that may fall from your list, the goals that change and adapt. They're all just ways of learning about yourself and understanding who you're becoming and how you're changing. And what a beautiful thing, you know? And I think building that relationship with yourself first and understanding and giving yourself that grace, right? Because a lot of what we're talking about today is it's a mix of everything, but there's a fine line. And you have to know how to balance it and make sure that it's not overflowing on one side over the other, right? And so part of that, if you're struggling with this idea of tunnel vision, and or if you're feeling stuck, you know, absolutely, community is a great way to maybe give you that new perspective and let you look at things differently. Because that lens, you guys, every time you get that upgrade, the picture just becomes more beautiful, more clearer. There's so much more that you didn't know was out there, and now you're like, whoa, how didn't I notice there was a huge butterfly right next to me? Now I can't unsee that butterfly. It's there now forever in my peripheral vision. And then it keeps growing and keeps getting bigger, and then you start seeing more about yourself and you start learning more about yourself. And so I think just, really understanding that essence of humanity, and that we are changing, evolving beings spiritually, mentally, physically, even when we talk about consistency to getting to your goals, like even consistently goal setting, that consistency is going to look different, right? One goal might have a different version of consistency versus another one, right? Something like a marathon is going to take a lot more dedication, a lot more discipline, but maybe something like taking some moments for self care will have a lot more ways that it can show up. And so just being mindful that There are so many ways to do anything, even with goal setting, and understanding that it's okay if it doesn't go exactly the way that you planned it, because at the end of the day, it happened the way it was meant to be. So yeah.
Point blank, period.
Mm-hmm.
Word.
Mic drop.
Mic drop.
Really. No, I mean, and it was like it's a great prophecy, I think, what Pam has spoken. It's a great way to end the discussion for tonight's topic, today's topic, this morning's topic. And I would just want to echo, I think what you have on your heart is very special. And what you want to achieve, as we've said, is no coincidence. So I just hope, that this episode is able to be a little bit of an ignition for you, you know, if we can help you to just get to the visualization process, right? If we can help you visualize for the very first time, right? Because you're just so worthy, and it took us our own amount of time, right, to get to this point in our lives now to be able to share the lessons that we have. But it's just because I was that same person who just felt so small, and who could not see a light at the end of a tunnel for me and what I wanted to be and who I wanted to be. And so that's why we wanted to talk about it. I feel like talking about your successes, especially when you're fresh out of them, is is one of the most powerful tools that we have as human beings, right? Because we want to learn from each other. We want to be just as successful as the people who we see around us. And when people get to share the little nuggets that help them get there while it's still that fresh in their heart, like there's really no greater gift. So happy to share that with you all. And that concludes our episode on goal setting. So, to accompany this topic for today, we want to call upon the wisdom of the energy, spirits, and ancestors that are around us. So, I'm going to pass it over to Miss Pam to finish off with our tarot reading.
Real
Yeah.
quick, I
Oh,
was actually just looking up Brittany runs the marathon. Did you know it's based off a real story?
yeah.
And it's a real person. Her name is Brittany O'Neill, and her time in the movie was the exact time that she had in real life. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an amazing it's a beautiful movie for anybody. Obviously, if you run, you're going to love it, but when I watched the movie, I was not. I've watched the movie 3 times, right? I like 3 totally different times in my life. And the first time I did, I probably hadn't run in like 6 months. So like it's an incredible movie just in general for anybody who again needs a jump start into doing something that they think is hard as fuck.
Yeah.
Like we should watch that movie. She'll make you feel like you can do anything. And it's
Yeah.
amazing that it really is her story.
Yeah, the writer was actually her roommate. So the
Oh,
Wow.
that
writer
I
of the
didn't
movie
know.
was her roommate. Yeah. His name, hold on. It comes up a lot here.
Wow.
And this article is actually talking about
Wait, his name.
yeah.
Oh, so it must have been a roommate later in life. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
it was. It was. Actually, and they even say that the Colezo? Paul, is it Paul Colezo? Paul Downs Colezo. Yeah, that he was her roommate and he wrote the movie um because of the what she was doing like in real life. So that's pretty amazing. Talk about community, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
someone wrote your story because of
Yeah.
how inspiring it was.
Mhm.
That's so special.
Yeah. I'm so glad we did this episode today. Um, we've gone through it. It feels like a lot, right? The whole goal setting can feel overwhelming. Um, and I know that we've had a lot of points, a lot of really good points that we brought up, but I feel as we were talking and as I was thinking about what I wanted to ask the cards, I think something that kept popping up in my mind that I feel would be really helpful for all of us listening is when we do get to that point, right, where we feel very clouded, where we might feel like We don't know if we can reach out to community. We don't know if that's our goal. Maybe we're stuck and we think, we are doing everything that we can. We still can't see it. If we feel that maybe we're trying to let go and still nothing's happening. What is something that can help us kind of get through that process? Because I do acknowledge that, the adventures in the journey, but the journey has its own bumps along the road. And so what can help us overcome and go over those bumps? Um and just
Oh,
point straight blank.
look at that.
Okay. So, the deck that we're using today is the Modern Witch Tarot deck, and the reason that I had picked it last time and why I wanted to use it again today is it's still a little bit different of a variation from the Raider Waite, but they are heavily based off of the traditional image. So it's still giving additional messages, but I really wanted a lot of clarity, right, with the messages that were going to come up. So, you see, I love this book. Okay. So the cards that came up, we have the 5 of cups and we have the King of Cups. So both cups over here. And the 5 of cups, first of all, cup energy is water, and it's also feelings and emotions. And the 5 of cups, when you see it, there's this woman wearing a black dress, and she has this city in the background with the bridge, and she's looking at 3 cups that have fallen over, and she has 2 cups behind her. And traditionally, this cup, you know this card, it kind of reminds us to remember to not dwell on things so much, right? Like, this person is looking at these 3 cups that have fallen, yet they have 2 cups behind them that are perfectly good and they can still use, right? And just for extra messages in the actual book itself, we have, for the 5 of cups, it says something important has been lost, and you're filled with soul crushing sadness and despair. Maybe a relationship has ended, or you've been laid off work. Whatever it was has destroyed your hopes for the perfect future you had envisioned. It's okay to feel defeated and mourn. Sadness is part of the process. You'll start to feel hope again eventually, and there is more love waiting for you when you're ready. I feel like that totally echoes everything that we've been saying, right? The idea of maybe it's just something that you're not ready for. Maybe you feel defeated, but then there's something else that kind of has to push you. Maybe that might be community, right? That might be something else, but that doesn't mean you're not deserving of it. It's just once you're ready to get there, if you're feeling at this moment where things aren't going your way or things aren't getting right, just understanding, you know, why is this happening? Is there something that I'm not looking at that I have to look at? Is there something that I'm missing? And kind of taking that different perspective of how you would look at that, instead of looking at those 3 cups of like, oh my God, that's it. I was supposed to have 5, 3 of them fell down. What am I going to do? You kind of get stuck there. Just make the best of the 2 cups that you have behind you. And then after the 5 of cups is the 6 of cups, which traditionally depicts somebody else coming in with a flower card behind them, and they're giving somebody cups. So here you are mourning over these cups that have fallen over, and the next step in the journey is somebody coming in, community, right? And giving you cups to replace those. And it might be filled with something even better. You have no idea. But if you spend all this time looking at all of these fallen cups, you'll never be able to move forward. And I think that the cards are really encouraging us to look past that, because the next card is the King of Cups. So the King of Cups is the last one in the deck, in the minor for the cups, right? And so in this modern witch tarot depiction, it's somebody who is sitting on their throne. They have the cup in their hand. They're wearing a suit, so they feel powerful. They have a crown on their head, and they have water around them. It's splashing all around. It's vivid, it's wild, but the throne is there and it's not moving, and they're sitting in their power. And in this deck, what they have is King of Cups. They're calming and their cup is brimming with love and compassion. They draw strength from treating others with tenderness and kindness, and they're truly in touch with all their emotions. They're the kind of person who you feel perfectly at ease with because their presence is sincere and accepting. If this indicates a relationship, you're finally fully able to let down all your walls and feel comfortable and loved by this person. If the king is you, you're doing a beautiful job as a friend and confidant, so be proud. So what I think what this card really is trying to evoke in terms of our context is this idea of, if you're feeling like, let's say, because relationship is what really came out here and it makes sense because it's the cups. So if someone is listening to our podcast at this moment and you might feel like where you're at in terms of your journey really revolves heavily around relationships, I think it's kind of asking you to take a look in the mirror, right? And really understand what it is that you're asking for. Are you emotionally ready for that? Right? Kind of like even Tess, when she got there and she was saying, oh, I'm here. Why aren't I happy? Why don't I have everything that I have? Again, it's taking that step back and realizing maybe there's something in you that has to change. Maybe there's something in the way that you see yourself or somebody else that has to change. And once you get there, and I think leading again, that sincerity, that tenderness, that kindness, I think it's also really applying to ourselves too, because we are our own harshest critics. So, how can you really expect to get somewhere if you were to treat somebody the way that you would treat yourself with that harsh criticism, that harsh self criticism, how do you expect that other person to get anywhere? All they're going to hear is that negativity. All they're going to hear is, oh, that didn't happen. So once you shift that perspective and you shift that narrative where you start saying no, you start leading with kindness, you like start leading yourself, giving yourself that grace, and you start treating yourself with the kind of kindness, tenderness, love, and compassion that you wish somebody would give you. That's when your perspective can start changing, right? That's when you start understanding. That's when Tess started seeing, no, it's okay. And she was able to enjoy the fruits of her labor or even realize that she is getting it and she just wasn't ready to see it. So maybe it's time for that check. And also, why I say that, and I don't think it's not, we're not, as we've said, it's not that you're not worthy, but it takes time and it's a whole process. And it's this reading is also encouraging this because at the bottom of the deck we have temperance, and temperance is a card that has it's a woman with wings, and she has two cups that are kind of flowing into each other, and she has a foot in the water, in like a body of water. And in the book it says balance is a beautiful thing. Temperance is a radiant angel decked out in rainbows, balancing one foot on land and the other in water, as she confidently pours water from cup to cup. Sunflowers are bursting behind her, and the sun is bright and full of joy. Temperance is the perfect alchemist, and she's full of song as she blends things together in harmony. Your life is off kilter, and you need to create some balance. Maybe you're burnt out from working too much. Or you've been binge watching TV all weekend and now your house is a mess. So it's now time to put your house in order and start doing things in moderation. You'll find that if you work to balance all the different aspects of your life, everything feels so much easier. Try and face this task with optimism and positivity and enjoy all the wonderful things in your life equally. So, that card literally summarized everything that we've said in this episode, right? And the importance of balance. It's why you cannot just force yourself into full tunnel vision mode. It's absolutely beneficial, but when it's too much, it's too much. And my friends, water, that's essential in our life. You drink too much of it, it's bad for you, right? Like your kidney cannot process that much water. And so all of it is a balance. And it's not saying, we're not saying do one better than the other one or whatever it is. No, the idea is finding the balance that works for you as well, right? And understanding that there are things I think the thing that jumped out to me the most in terms of when I was reading the description for this card is start doing things in moderation, and that if you work to balance all the different aspects of your life, things feel easier because that's when you start getting out of that rut, right? A lot of the times when even with exercise, when people say that if you feel stuck, challenge yourself. Your body's already gotten used to it. Why are you plateaued? Because you're not challenging your body. And so find that balance of, but then again, if you challenge yourself too hard, you can injure yourself and reverse all of the progress that you've done. So really finding that balance and leading with that same kind of grace, kindness, and compassion that either you're seeking from somebody else or that you would give to somebody else, give that and find that in yourself. And once you get there, once you do that and you really feel in power and in control, um, and understanding the fine lines with all of the aspects of what it is that you're trying to do with your goal, right? You will get there. And one of the things that also came up last time, um, and it popped up again today. So I'm glad that earlier when I was kind of fiddling with the cards, I saw this card pop up. Is this card is just a normal card in this deck in particular, but it has such a beautiful message, so I want to read it because it also came out the last time that we tried to do this episode. And it says, you are a badass being full of life, love, and possibilities. Through this deck, may you find a path to your best self. So again, you are so deserving, you are so worthy, but you get to decide what is your best self. And your best self will always be changing. And as long as you're doing the best and you're balancing things out, things will work out for you. And again, the adventure is in the journey. So appreciate the journey, love the journey, be grateful for the journey, because otherwise it would be a pretty boring ass movie, book, whatever. You know, the most exciting part of anything that we see, hear, or watch, and even storytelling, right, is the journey, the process. How did that happen?
The drama.
The
Yeah.
conflict.
Mhm.
The what is it? The plot.
The plot.
Yeah,
The
do it for the plot,
The plot.
if nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
No, but hopefully other reasons, because we've talked about so many beneficial reasons that there could be to just pursue your dreams and go for what you want, fam. I hope that you do. You should. That was an amazing reading. Um, so cool. I love that it was all water too, because it makes me just think about going with the flow. Which I think one of us actually said verbatim tonight.
Well,
And
going with the flow and even like the changing, because sometimes it turns into ice, sometimes it goes up in steam, depending on the environment around it.
right, but
So,
water is malleable and
Yeah.
Mhm.
adapts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Water is malleable.
Well, that will do it for our episode today. Before we close, though, I did want to offer an opportunity if Tess and Pam want to do any housekeeping. I don't know if there's anything we need to tell the people before we close out for today. But, summer is officially here. So I just want to say a big thank you to everybody. We are in the heat, literally, of
Mm-hmm.
season 2, and it's been going so well ever since we launched. So thank you to everybody who's been tuning in. Thank you to our new listeners. Thank you for finding us. Let us know how you found us. It'd be so cool to know. And yeah, if you ladies want to shout anything out, touch base.
Hearing from everybody is always so insightful. It's always rewarding for me. So of course, like, we have so many channels open, and of course, the most popular one being Instagram. So even if you feel a reaction, a comment, a shock, please don't hesitate to message. We are, all three of us, are so happy to reply and really hear you out. So that's always super rewarding, and I've always enjoyed it.
Yeah. Take a picture. Maybe we made a funny face. Show us that too. We love it.
Yeah.
Yes, like, comment, subscribe, tag us. We love it
Follow.
all, and we would love to share it with the world too.
Yeah. I think the only thing I want to share is that I think the next couple of episodes are going to be really exciting. And hopefully, we'll have some new guests on there. So stay tuned. Look forward to it. And as well, we do have a Discord server. So if you're wanting to engage with us on there as well, I'm usually the one who's heavily the heavy Discord user.
Yeah.
So feel free to join in and chat with us. You can find that link to join on our website at hightmystique.com. You can join our Discord server there, and we would love to build that community over there and listen to the ideas that you guys have, and even chat with some of you guys who maybe want to be a part of the conversation as well. Come join and chat with us.
Yeah.
We love you all. Enjoy the rest of your day. And we can't wait to see you for the next one. Take care. Be well.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Woody's Roundup. Come on, it's time to play.
So full
He's
circle.
the rootinest, tootinest cowboy in the Wild Wild West.
Woo!
Rooney.
Roundup.